Yeah, one iPad sketch. So I want you to think about how this might relate to you in whatever school that you're working in. So what are the schools that are here mainly? Does anybody know? What have we got? We've got medicine, I think? No? Science and health? Okay, so a few science and health. Is there anyone in communication arts? Humanities? No? Education? Yes? And I suppose the health education is nursing as well, is it? That's incorporated in that? No, so you've got some nursing. Okay. All right, well, I'm not sure, you might be thinking, now what's this sketching got to do with my area and how is this relevant? But I think that there's probably quite a lot of relevancy now in getting students to use a bit of hand-eye coordination so that they can start thinking about things from their own head, using their hand to think through things slowly. And this is actually what I'm looking at in terms of the design school. I don't know if you've got similar issues, but we've got a lot of plagiarism issues within the design school, visual plagiarism issues and also written plagiarism issues. So is that the case? Yeah, okay. So one of the ways we're looking at is actually getting students to think through their ideas, which is actually best practice anyway, with a bit of a rough sketch. So starting from a starting point or writing it down longhand. And I know that the law school, anyone from the law school here? The law school in Sydney anyways, is starting to use this as a means of seeing what students' original ideas are, how competent they are. So, oh, here we go, I'm just trying this. All right, so, let's see, I don't think. There we go, okay. So just doing a really rough sketch, yes, there's lots of applications that can do that. One of the things that I've found is very useful is that there's a couple of these sketch apps which are free or up to $5 to $10, and they allow you to record your process. So think in terms of what you're teaching and how you might be able to utilise the fact that you can actually record somebody's thinking process and what they're going through in their head. Okay, so you can actually record that and they can then look at that to evaluate that. So it's very, very portable, and this is great for students, and I found this really good. So I'm coming from, you know, a visual arts background. So I'm using this in the field, I'm going out and I'm drawing at performances or anywhere, often in dark rooms. So having something that's backlit is a lot more interesting. I'm just going to try this. Pointer working, there we go. It's a lot more efficient and easy to deal with than trying to find some kind of surface, having lots of paints and different bits and pieces and different materials, which can be quite cumbersome. And I'm hoping that this will encourage students to just get out there and start doing it. So one of the main things is to just get students to start doing it. So if they get inspired, then they might start doing it. So it's also editable. I do this when I'm just learning this new technology. No, it's a scroll up. Right. Now this has been done with a finger. I think it was the second drawing I ever did using the iPad. So it's very easy to use your finger, and I'll talk about stylus in a sec. But the one good thing about this is it's editable, it's got Command-Z, you don't have to be precious, and students actually really enjoy just fiddling around. They don't feel as precious as they do with a piece of paper and pencil. So, and it also is easy for them to put into some of their other materials. You can do mixed media within it, so you can bring in photos. So think about, this is just a visual arts kind of example. It's just from a life drawing thing that I had to have. But just think about your own discipline, because you can take photos, they can use photos, they can use diagrams, they can use scans from books. They can actually put that in together with a sketch, which may actually be perhaps a mind map or some other kind of sketching on top. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a drawing. And the main thing that's really good to do is they can record it. Now this is what I have discovered is the real beauty of some of these sketch apps. You can actually record what you're doing from the very beginning to the end very, very easily, and put together with another program, which is iMovies, which you also just download for, I don't know how much it is, maybe it's $10, might be a bit more, one of the more expensive ones. very easy to just stitch it together if you need to stitch things together and create a very small file that you can upload anywhere. So this is great for students to be able to look at how they were thinking about something. So when they're thinking through like a problem, particularly a visual problem, it can work really well. So you start from the beginning point, you can be rubbing out, all of that kind of thing is lost in digital technology. Normally, if you're on one of the other programs, you can do it, you can use the stylus, you can do all sorts of things, but it's lost. So your thinking trail is no longer there, where it often is on a bit of paper, where you might have something stretched out or change. With this, you can actually record it. So this is just an illustration, quick illustration done on location, and I can go back, and I had forgotten some of these things that I did. I'd forgotten how I'd gone about doing this particular drawing and my thought processes. So I can now go back and look at that and go, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why I did that. Why did I make that decision at that point in time? So that can be quite good for people who are problem solving as well. So the only drawbacks, and there are drawbacks, is that you've got a tiny little drawing area, which for some students they don't find a problem. They're used to using a little pad. They're used to being small. But if you're used to drawing large, it can be quite cumbersome. You actually learn to do it in a different way, and you learn to look at things in small areas, which I've found has had some kind of effect on the way I think about things and also on the way my work has been changed. The tools are a little bit limited on some of the sketch apps. They can be, they don't quite look the way you want them to. They aren't quite the right size that you want them to be. That's getting much better. Sketchbook Pro is probably the better one. And there's this lack of physicality. Has anybody used a stylus? Has anyone actually done any drawing on their iPad? No? Anybody? Yeah. There's a lack of physicality. And there's just something about feeling that you can really whip into that bit of paper. You can't do that on an iPad. But you do get used to that. But I think that there are some things that it can't emulate. And the resolution, of course, you're stuck with the resolution. If you wanted to do something, a large poster, science poster, for instance, you might be a little bit limited because you can get 300 dpi at nearly A3, which is not too bad. That's not too bad. So in terms of actually creating images that you might put, that students might put into their final portfolio, it's sufficient for that. So these are the ones that I quickly reviewed. Paper, which is online, suggested for students to use, to download. It's free. It's actually very limited. And I thought, I'll just try this out and see how it goes. But I doubt whether students would actually use this for very long at all. It's actually quite difficult to use because of the physicality. The brushes, which is also quite cheap, but, and that's the one that David Hockney raved about, and he's done lots of exhibitions and things using brushes. That has a lot of limitations too. It's like it's a little bit cool, it's a bit cheaper. The Procreate, which I think won the award, is fantastic. I love using it. It doesn't have a recording function, but if it did, it'd be wonderful. Students love using Procreate. It's really cool. It has this nice sort of feel of being able to use. It's got a very good interface as well. And Sketchbook Pro is the one which has a great recording function, which works with a lot of other programs. You can take it into Photoshop, all the layers, still works in Photoshop. You can actually build up your ideas if you're into that kind of creating actual visuals. But in terms of using it as a thinking tool, it's also fabulous because you can do a very easy sketch much better than Pages and some of the others. And you can record it. And then of course, there's Photoshop Touch, which is just a cut-down version of Photoshop, which is really just about using filters and things to do with photos that you can then bring into some of the sketch. So it's not really. So it's just a quick, broad overview, but this is the very first drawing that I did, actually. I just went through the whole lot of them to do. Now this explains, this shows the physicality problems of Pages, and I'm only talking about this because a lot of people have said, of the paper 53, oh, that's the one that we've got, because it was recommended and it's free and whatever. It's free, yeah. And it did get a very good write-up and it's got a great interface. But it has a problem in terms of physicality. The faster you go, the fatter the line. The slower you go, the slower you go, the fatter the line. The faster you go, the thinner. It's really hard to use. It's not intuitive. So I don't recommend it to students. Brushes is difficult. Procreate, you can do some lovely things in that, but it's really sort of more a visualisation tool. Sketchbook Pro, this is the one that works quite well. And you can actually use, when you get into it, you can use some of the things to great effect. You can change the orientation, move things in, and you can build it up. And there's a couple of exercises I've been looking at for students to use very simply that they can use. Now, anybody could do, obviously there's a certain amount of a level of drawing there, but a lot of students just doodle. They just fiddle around and they doodle and they think things through just using these, this is a tool, and then they play that back and they can remember what they were thinking about at that time. So it could have some other kind of applications. And I have also used it where you record as well. You can record your voice as you're doing it, so you can remember what you're thinking. So in terms of research tool, it might have some application. So that's just showing you how you can sort of get into some of the attributes of it are very, very similar to Photoshop. So you can rub out and you can do stuff and you put layers, quite a few layers. Now this can be printed out. This is actually just done while the person's dancing. So it's just a sketch on location. So it's done very fast. But you can put, yeah, you just put layers over the top. And so I was doing this one because I wanted to trial that idea of scraper board, you know, which students do when they're in kindergarten. So I wanted to try and sort of think about how they might be able to using that technique of using the layers. So Photoshop Touch, really just for filters and that kind of thing. But you can do some nice things and you can bring it into some of the sketch programs. So how the apps work together, I just want to quickly show you this because Photoshop Touch is quite good to have, particularly for people who are used to using filters. There are some filters in these, but they're very limited. It works very well with these two programs. Comes in with layers and all, which is amazing. Then you can put the animations from Sketchbook Pro into iMovies. Very easy to stitch it together. Top and tail it with some kind of explanation. Students can write in explanations about what they were thinking about at that time. And then they can all go to Dropbox. So they've got access to it later. And the styluses, there's a lot of very fancy styluses out there. I've done a trial of virtually all of them. And the Bamboo Wacom is by far the best one. So from my point of view, using it, you know, 24/7 all the time, some of them break down very quickly. So the Pogo is the one that they suggest at the university. You go through it very quickly. You go through the tips very, very quickly. You can see they've got little holes at the end. It just breaks down. I've gone through, it's too expensive. So this one, I think it's $10, $5 to $10 more. It's lasted forever. And you can get tips for that, but it goes for a long time. But you know, I've even tried the $2 ones. You know, they're fine. I use my finger most of the time. You actually get quite adapted. I say to students, just use your finger. You've got your finger everywhere you go. Get used to it. You know? You can do a lot of stuff with your finger. This has been done with a finger. Because I think it was the first thing that it was that day that I did all those first drawings. We had some models come in. So this is, you can do quite a bit with the Pogo. And it can be very accurate. But it does break down very quickly. So I found that I've sort of kind of given up on that. A lot of people swear by the Pogo. I'll go to the... now I just want to show you in terms of quickly how you might be able to get students to think about using it, because there's a certain amount of muscle memory that you need to get, a certain amount of practice that you need to have, just as you would with any new tool. And one fun way that we've been doing is just to get students to doodle. So, you know, there's a couple of things where you can even trace. You know? So one of the ones we're looking at is you take a photograph of something textual, then you can look at it closely. You can see images in it. Anybody can do it. anyone can doodle, but you're still using your brain, you're still using your hand, thinking through, and you can create something which is reasonable at the end. And then they go on and they actually start to explore their own techniques and their own thoughts about how they do it. So I just wonder if there's any, I'd be really interested to know if anybody can see any applications within their area where they might be looking at problem solving, not necessarily design thinking, but some kind of creative thinking exercise or problem solving exercise that they have that using hand-eye coordination would be of an advantage. Record of that, their thinking trail might also be an advantage for students to then go back and evaluate their actual thinking process. So if anybody's got any thoughts about that, I'd be really interested. We can use it across. I know Roy Tasker's got excited and he's got some ideas about how to use it in science. Many other disciplines can think of anything. I'd be interested to know. Yeah, so this is just, it goes on forever. But it's just basically to show the whole process. And it's very easy to do something in real time and actually show people how to do it. Very, very easy programs to use.